The men in brass helmets. My name is Sergeant Klaus Richter of the 12th Bavarian Infantry, part of the glorious German 9th Army. In the summer of 1917, we were the iron fist of the Reich on the Eastern Front, and our commander was the legendary Field Marshal August von Mackensen. We called ourselves Mackensen's Phalanx, and we had never known defeat. A year prior, we had swept through Romania like a scythe through wheat. The Romanian army, for all its misplaced gallantry, had shattered before us. We took their capital, pushed them into the corner of Moldavia, and expected their surrender to be a mere formality. Now, in August 1917, we were here to deliver the final blow. The plan was brutally simple. Our Austro-Hungarian comrades would strike from the west through the Oituz Pass, while we would hammer north from maraseti. We would be the jaws of a wolf, closing on the neck of a wounded animal. Confidence was high. The Romanians are broken, Klaus. My friend Hans chuckled as we cleaned our rifles under the oppressive sun. They ran in 16, they'll run again. We'll be drinking schnapps in Iași before the month is out. I nodded in agreement. We were veterans of the Soma. We had faced the best the British and French had to offer. What could these peasants with their new French helmets possibly do against us? Our artillery opened the battle with a roar that we felt in our bones. It was the music of German power, a prelude to a victory we considered preordained. As the bombardment lifted, we advanced into the smoke, our Feldgrau uniforms blending with the dust. "For the Kaiser and the fatherland," our officer bellowed. The first surprise was the silence. Where we expected retreat, we were met with a storm of disciplined machine gun and artillery fire. It was accurate, deadly. These were not the panicked soldiers of 1916. These men held their ground. Our advance slowed, then stalled, then turned into a brutal trench-by-trench brawl. The mopping up operation had become a meat grinder. Days bled into a week of savage fighting. The battle for the railway station at maraseti was as vicious as anything I had seen on the Western Front. We would take a position at dawn, only to lose it in a ferocious counterattack by dusk. The Romanians were fighting with a fury we simply did not understand. In the midst of the chaos, we began to hear their battle cry, a phrase shouted with a guttural, desperate rage. "Pe aici nu se trece." Hans translated it for me, his face grim. It means, "They shall not pass." We scoffed, but the words unnerved us. This was not the language of a beaten army. This was the language of a cornered one, which is far more dangerous. The climax for me came during the battle for Pančiu Bridge. My platoon had managed to secure a foothold on the northern bank of the Siret, a critical position. The Romanian resistance had been fierce, but we had pushed them back. We were reinforcing our position when the cry went up again. A counterattack was forming. But this was different. Leading the charge was a unit unlike any I had ever seen. They weren't wearing the standard steel Adrian helmets of the other Romanian soldiers. They wore heavy, polished brass helmets that gleamed like gold in the hellish light of the battle. Atop each helmet was a crest, like those of ancient legionaries. "Who in God's name are they?" Hans muttered beside me. They came at us not like soldiers, but like men possessed by some holy fire. They carried rifles and bayonets, but some wielded fire axes, swinging them with terrifying force. They moved with a reckless bravery that bordered on insanity, charging directly into our machine gun nests. They were the spearhead, the forlorn hope, and their attack shattered our composure. They hit our line with the force of a physical blow. I found myself face to face with one of them. He was a broad-shouldered man, his face black with soot, his brass helmet dented. He roared, not with words, but with pure fury, and lunged. His bayonet scraped against my ribs as I parried. And for a moment, we were locked in a desperate struggle. It wasn't hate I saw in his eyes, but something more primal, an absolute refusal to yield. Our line broke. We were pushed back across the bridge in a chaotic retreat. Hans fell, a fire axe embedded in his chest. I looked back and saw them, the men in the brass helmets standing on the bank, not cheering, but standing as defiant statues, securing the ground they had retaken. Later, we learned who they were. They were the Bucharest Military Firefighters Company. Firefighters. Our high command was incredulous. The Romanians were so desperate they were throwing their city firefighters into the front line as shock troops. But to us, the soldiers who had faced them, it was no longer a sign of desperation. It was a symbol of their unbreakable will. They had become legends in our trenches, whispered about with a mixture of fear and awe. The Feuerwehrmänner. The great German offensive ground to a halt. At maraseti, we were bled white. From the mountains, the news was the same. The Oituz offensive had failed. The wolf's jaw had failed to close. I write this now from a field hospital, my arm bound in plaster. The arrogance is gone, replaced by a weary, grudging respect. We did not lose to a lesser army. We lost to a nation that had decided it would rather be annihilated than conquered. We lost to farmers, teachers, and shopkeepers who held the line. And we were broken by the unlikeliest of heroes, the men in brass helmets, who fought with the very fire they were trained to extinguish. They taught Mackinson's phalanx a lesson in iron, and a motto we would never forget: Pe aici nu se trece.